Hi, everyone. It's Friday. Is the EV revolution all over? We've seen Rivian today, even coming out with, they've slashed their full production numbers. We've seen a slowdown in the EV sales. And unfortunately, with like all media, is that we tend to be drawn towards the extremes of all news, whether it's social, political, economic. And then there's panic then because we see, Tesla didn't hit their numbers or didn't deliver their numbers. Rivian has slashed their numbers. There's lots of questions out there. And I thought, who would be a great person to talk to that is involved in the full chain of this entire story, from literally from the ground up, and also using a bit of clickbait because obviously this EV push is not over, but to address a lot of the big key questions that we're facing of the overall adoption of electric vehicles and batteries as a whole, per region, and just the overall sense of what it's going to take from here and where the opportunity is. So here we have John Passalacqua, who's the CEO and director at First Phosphate. And we're just going to talk about the EV space, batteries as well, because that is an application that's not just electric vehicles. And some of the questions surrounding some of the numbers, what he thinks is happening in the overall economy with inflation and everything else. And then, of course, we'll look at what they're doing and why their project is certainly very unique for people. John, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Thank you, Andrew.
So let me ask you a couple quick questions here. What do you think is one of the main drivers as to this slowdown that we're seeing in specifically EVs as a total?
Yeah, look, I mean, you have to look at the word slowdown and how it looks like. It's like the first derivative, right? It's a slowdown in the rate of growth, right? So there is definitely a little bit of a slowdown in the rate of growth, but the rate of growth is still there, and it's still there for companies who are able to catch it. What has happened is, obviously, on the back of COVID, a lot of stimulus went into the market in general. I'm not talking stock market only. I'm talking about, the economy in general. All that stimulus was pulled pretty quick, by the raising interest rates, the deemed pullback of all the stimulus that went in. So, a lot of the concepts that were that were getting traction during the COVID days, and just after kind of just went poof and they went away, like plant-based foods, EVs, everything else. So you have to ask yourself, what's here to stay, right? Like, it looks like plant-based foods and all that kind of gone, and maybe gone for good. But EVs, is it gone? Is it gone for good? You don't have to be a big fanatic in terms of global warming and all of that. I'm pretty neutral kind of guy. I'm in it in here because I like to work in things where I believe in, but I also like to work in things where there's money to be made. So I think that, you need to look at this and say, well, is it still going to be here? Are EVs going away? No. Is grid storage going away? Is the need for batteries to store electricity going away? No. In fact, it's getting more and more voracious. Look at everything that's come out recently that has been impacting our world, or that, if you want to focus it on markets, okay, AI, right? Electricity, all these things, it's all becoming an electron economy, right? From chat GPT to Google searches to robotics to anything to do with AI. It's all based on computing power, which is sort of kind of, computer brains, which they use what? Is electricity, right? So it's all about electricity. The consumption of electricity, if you go back, even to the 1960s and now, it's incredible. It's voracious. Like, look at what your house used to be, maybe even in the 90s and 2000s, early 2000s. What did you have in your house that took electricity? I remember growing up, 1990s wasn't too much. Then the cell phones came, and then the computers came, and then every single gadget, my freaking toothbrush is now electric. My razor is electric. Everything plugs into a USB. The fridge talks to you. So, right? Everything is becoming electron based, right? So, that has a lot to do with electricity. So, even if you don't believe in EVs and you think it's all going to go stay on gas powered cars, or it's moving to hydrogen, just look at energy storage, right? All the little appliances that need batteries, that's not going to go away. It's only going to get more and more voracious. And also remember, right? Everybody likes to talk about extremes. It's either, I'm on an all oil guy, I'm an all hydrogen guy, I'm an all NMC battery guy, I'm an all NLFP battery guy. Look, the need for electricity and the consumption of electricity and gadgets and everything else that runs electrically is getting only stronger. So there's going to be a need for everything. There's going to be a need for nuclear fuel. There's going to be a need for natural gas fuel. Yes, there's even going to be a need for coal. There's going to be a need for solar, wind. All of that stuff is stored on battery, mostly LFP battery. So none of this stuff is going away. You have to look at this as a curve that's going up like this, but along those curves, you're going to have your peaks and your troughs. So we're in a trough, but I believe we're coming to the end of the trough. And I also believe that if you look at the wildest swings that we've had in the stock markets, and what's ensued after has been an equally wild swing the other way. Let me focus on a few things. Remember, after every stock market crash, what happens? Boom, it wildly swings the other way. Remember during COVID, just coming into COVID, the market was basically crashing. They cut interest rates and boom, things went the other way. We had this massive market rally from what were the depths of the lows, right? Early 2021, I believe. Look at, remember the price of oil, and gas, just when COVID hit, remember it went negative and programs couldn't handle it. And a bunch of guys at Interactive Brokers lost money because it couldn't even contemplate negative oil prices. And then what happened after that? Boom, we were at 50, now we're at what, $76 a barrel? I mean, look at gold, right? What's happened, the problem that we have going on right now with humanity is really the swings, right? And in the economy, we're just swinging wildly from one extreme to another, like EVs on, EVs off. Well, what do you think the counter trend to that's going to be? It's going to be EVs on again. Pick your places, pick your spots, pick where you want to get involved. Now, the other thing on your question there, Andrew, was a lot of this early sort of battery cycle, battery factories, gigafactories. It was based on a lot of nonsense, right? A lot of these gigafactories were basically just raising money at higher and higher valuations privately. They were never taking care of what their input materials would be, what their customers would be, and inevitably they've all failed. So a lot of the big gigafactory concepts have failed. So those were kind of the tops down sort of top down sort of constructs. But take a look at First Phosphate, which is my company, for instance. We're building it from the bottoms up. We're focusing on critical minerals. We're focusing on phosphate. There's nowhere to get phosphate other than phosphate that is deemed for agriculture, which is sitting at full capacity and is running out. And we're here focused on very special igneous rock to build up from the bottoms up, create a lot of purified phosphoric acid to be able to make a lot of LFP battery, which is now the dominant battery of mass adoption. So we're building it from the bottoms up, and we built it in the really hard times. I think the good times are coming. So look out for some companies like ours that are doing it in a different way. Just because everybody's running out the door or rushing in the door the same way doesn't mean that we all have to be doing that. So I think what I'm trying to say is there's some excellent value out there, some excellent entrepreneurs, some excellent companies out there that are working really hard in the electrification space. And I think now is the time to start snooping around because there might be some excellent values out there.
I always liken just the basic conversation when people feel like they're forced. They say, "Oh, we're doing this transition, so I'm forced to buy an EV." If you would literally just position it to people and said, "You don't have to do it. Everyone has a choice, but drive one." Like they're pretty fun to drive. Like I think a lot of people would actually like it, even if they're naysayers, because they feel polarized. And even if it's a slower adoption with a hybrid first or whatever. People just got their backs up against the wall because there's so much change happening in the world. It seems almost like chaotic. And within our own phase, like you see last year, uranium was all the hit. Everyone's in uranium. And then it cycled back down, and that's not changing as well. I mean, you see all these big tech billionaires, they're involved with nuclear intensely. And every day you see either it's 3 Mile Island with, Constellation being funded to get that going again. It'll cycle back up as well. But the news needs to get eyes on things. And there's no doubt, whether it's Larry Fink saying, once, like you said, the election doesn't matter. There's a big, large macro that's happening. Trillions have been invested. And of course, there has to be hiccups, especially when you have inflation, you've got supply route changes, you've got geopolitics, which is a big factor. There's so many factors you expect it to be, but that does leave a big opportunity and opening for smart investors to find these actual value stocks. And I don't ever say this about exploration companies necessarily, that because they don't necessarily have a resource, that they have stuff. You guys are value because you have you've got some great discovery numbers, and you're vertically integrated, and that's a very unique opportunity to find a value stock that is supplying the critical metals and critical phosphoric acid for whether it's EV or whether it's for just batteries. That's a unique vision compared to the big markets, whether it's AI chips and going, oh, we're raising $8 billion and we're going to do this. And then kind of scratch your head going, well, do we have access to NVIDIA chips? Can we even do this? Can we build that out? That seems to have happened quite a bit, that other way around model.
Yeah, look, I love to be a CEO. I love to be an entrepreneur in this environment. This is the best environment for me to operate in. Why? Because I'm able to move forward. We've got a very prudent burn. We've got very entrepreneurial staff. We've been able to advance a lot in this terrible environment. Whereas all the companies that were running hot and heavy and not producing enough, they're all going down. So it just makes us shine even more. And it slows down the whole industry. Meanwhile, we've been going fast. So the delta for what we've been able to accomplish with respect to the industry going backwards, we're going up here. The industry's come down back a bit. So boom, it just puts us much more forward. I love working in difficult environments. I mean, we went public February of 2023, right when the lithium crash started and everyone started selling everything that was lithium and batteries and everything else. You know what? Perfect. We just kept executing. That's what we said, our board, our management, let's just keep executing. We're going to execute right through this. And that's what we've done. And now we come out the other side and in a very good spot. And I think we are on the other side. I think once these elections are behind us, and I think once everything settles out, you're going to see some people coming back in for value. But one thing I wanted to caution as well, Andrew, is to everybody listening, is we got to stop chasing the next trend all the time. Like chase this trend for 2-3 months. Oh, it's over. Sell it. Go to the next one. I think we got a little bit spoiled with these things such as cannabis, blockchain, a lot of these sort of trades that were all on or all off, and nobody could see. Everybody said that they were amazing trades, and then they were terrible trades. What about if we just get back to the normals and the basics of just looking at companies, no matter what sector they're in, look at what they're doing. Is there a good management team? Is there a good fundamental business model? Is there a fundamental industry here? And just start going longer, a little bit longer in these things instead of bailing in and bailing out. I think we as a stock market, as an industry, and as investors would do a hell of a lot better if we could just calm down, slow it down, and just go with the flow and focus on value.
So let me ask you, just because it applies to both EVs and just larger scale batteries, is walk me through some of the battery discussion, because I think what holds back, say, a generalist investor is they look and they see, oh, like I'm gonna have to learn all the brand new stuff. I need, what's a solid state? What's this kind of battery, a vanadium battery? What's this battery? Like they can feel overwhelmed that, well, what if, say, specifically the lithium iron phosphate batteries, that's not used next year or 2 years from now. Under that framework of someone who's brand new and not sure and starts thinking, I don't know which battery I'm supposed to look at, maybe give a bit of a macro as to what that environment looks like moving forward here.
Now, look, I mean, I could tell you, why I got into this business and what was the sort of analysis that I made, and it holds true today. Instead of, there's a lot of theoretics there of what's going to happen here, what's going to happen there, which batteries are going to be, which is not going to be. Well, we looked at lithium iron phosphate battery. It's been around since the 2000s. It was doing really well. And then the Chinese government at the time was really focusing on the nickel, manganese, cobalt battery and investing hard into that, as was some of the other parts of the world. But then they realized they just couldn't get enough of the input materials. The costs were too high. And they ended up going back to the lithium iron phosphate battery. It's been out there for 25 years, a lithium iron phosphate battery. And if you look at all the future predictions for this, it should be there for another 15 to 20 years. The other things that I focus on is just the sheer low cost of it. I mean, you're using phosphate. Phosphate's about, can be between $300 to $500 a ton for decent phosphate rock, which makes purified phosphoric acid, which goes into the battery. And people are talking sodium ion batteries and everything else. I just don't know a commodity that you can get cheaper per ton than phosphate, which is $300 to $500 a ton. So you can try and replace it all you want. You're still not going to get to much lower cost than that. So I think the replacement has already happened where, the nickel, the manganese, and the cobalt has kind of been replaced by the phosphate. These batteries are, as you see here in the slide, they've got good fire safety. They're the lowest cost on the market. They're extremely versatile. They can work in large scale, small scale automobiles, passenger vehicles. That's only 10% of the market. Another 10% is commercial and large scale transportation. Another 10% is telecom. a full 50 to 60% is energy storage. Because why? Because they're cheaper and they're safe. And I just don't know how you beat them.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm in where I am. I always go for where's the mass market going to be, where's the mass consumer market's going to be, and where's the lowest cost going to be. And so, there you have it, right? Lithium iron phosphate is now 67% of battery output out of China and going higher for that one particular reason.
That cost factor, that's a big thing that we see as an argument, like say Rivian today, Ford kind of saying, oh my God, the cost here, like taking away the conversation of tariffs, but just on the cost of a very high-end battery is very expensive. You cut that way back. So like the Tesla 3, that's a lithium iron phosphate battery. That cost factor is a big thing that holds people back a little bit. They go, oh, what's the cost factor? And then of course the adoption of charging stations and all those other infrastructure that's required. Where do you see that happening? And we'll look mainly just Canada, US as a kind of a focus for now, with that discussion of tariffs against China to help bolster and support the vehicle side, battery growth as a whole, and where, like, when you're in a proxy war with China on many things, where are you going to get all of your supply of the metals? This is the two sides of a coin where you say, well, we're going to put tariffs on your cars from China. Where is most of the U.S. going to get their material from?
Yeah, I mean, look, on a couple fronts. The first question you were asking was, I believe, was on the where are we going to get the materials from? And the second question is, actually, the first was on the price. Okay, so one thing you got to focus on the price is there's a lovely little thing called the Inflation Reduction Act. Okay, it says a lot of things in it. But one thing it says, in order to get the $7,500 US subsidy on purchasing an electric vehicle that was made in America or made in North America, the price of that vehicle has to be below $55,000 US. And the only way you could create a vehicle that's under $55,000 US right now is the way Tesla does it. And that's with the LFP battery. The problem is that LFP battery that they have comes from China. So now they're going to lose that $7,500 incentive. And why do they do that? The US government just said, enough. We want that battery made at home. So they have to in order to get the $7,500 rebate, the vehicle has to be at under $55,000. In order for it to be under $55,000, you have to use the LFP battery. You can no longer use the LFP battery that comes from China to get that rebate. So what? The LFP battery has to be made here in North America. And that's what we're doing at First Phosphate. We are one part of the supply equation, which is bringing the phosphate and the lithium iron phosphate, which is the cathode active material for making that battery. Now, certainly other portions of the industry have to come together and make the other parts of the battery, but we're gearing up for that. We're getting ready for that, and we're going to be able to be one of the first that produces cathode active material here in North America for that process to take place. And there's a massive industry behind that. Predictions are at 50 billion, most of which will be in North America. So we want to be the first in that market, and we are getting there on the raw material side, and we're going to be one of the first to the market. So that's what I think some of the more astute companies are focusing on, is getting into one of the parts of that supply equation of a battery chemistry and of a supply equation that has to come back to North America in order to meet that Inflation Reduction Act. Because regardless of who comes in the power, that's staying. The Inflation Reduction Act or some form derivative of it is staying, and the cost, the prohibitive cost of importing these products from China is only going to get worse. I mean, they've made it clear in Europe, they've made it clear in the United States and in Canada. The tariffs, the walls have come up. There's hundreds of thousands of these cars and battery type of products sitting at the ports in China, and they're just sitting there and they can't move. And I don't think they will ever move. They'll probably get scrapped before they move because the other countries just don't want it. The other countries want to develop their own supply chains, and that's what we're doing here at First Phosphate. We're betting on that trend, and that trend not going away and only getting stronger.
Now, here's a good question for you, because I think I've asked you before, but I'd like to do it on a broader audience here. Do you think there was just some assumptions? Say, if you're at a major car company, you just say, "Oh, well, we'll just go to Nutrien. Like, they've got phosphate, so I'll just get the Nutrien there." Not out of maybe like laziness or just not lack of understanding. And you go, oh, there's a giant potash, food, like they've got phosphate. How hard can it be? We don't have to worry about that. It's taken care of. Do you think there was some assumptions that could be a solution?
Yeah, look. I mean, I love that assumption. I love that assumption for one simple reason, is because when they go to call on that assumption to actually get supply, it's not going to be there, and we're going to be there as First Phosphate. And I've heard that assumption made even by some very senior executives who running the gigafactories or the supposed gigafactories, raising the money for their gigafactories, building their gigafactories, without even knowing where their supply raw materials are going to come in. They just haven't gotten to that part. They've been too busy raising the money to try and build the big building to make the gigafactory to even know what's going to go into the gigafactory and how's it going to work. That's somebody else's problem. It's down the road. Good luck. So in terms of going to one of the established producers of purified phosphoric acid, there's only four, maybe five of them in the Western world. You have to remember one thing: most of the purified phosphoric acid, which is the input for making LFP battery, is made by companies who are in the fertilizer world. So they're taking the sedimentary phosphate rock, which is not necessarily very pure, and they're making a lot of fertilizer. 80% of what they make, or even 90, even 100, is fertilizer grade phosphate, because it doesn't have to be pure to be put back on the farming fields. And only a small portion at the top of that, 10, 20%, a little bit higher depending on how you purify, is made into purified phosphoric acid. But they're already making the most amount of purified phosphoric acid that they can, for the most part. And that's already going into things like soft drinks. It's going into Coca-Cola. It's going into Colgate. It's going into water treatment. It's going into paints. It's going into fire extinguishers. It's going into pharmaceuticals. It's going into cosmetics. It's going into specialty chemicals. It's going into all of these industrial uses. And that equation there, if you want to go, you can bring up the slide. I think this is important for your listeners to see. Go to slide 10. Well, it says page 10. It's really page. It's at the bottom of where all of our management and advisory are. It's not the first page after that, but it's the second. It says global purified phosphoric acid. Yeah, keep going down. Global purified phosphoric acid is going to be a big issue. Keep going. Yep, one more. Next one. Boom. So if you see that one there, you see that little thin blue line. Maybe you can point to that. That is kind of the supply of purified phosphoric acid in the world from now until 2045, right? And that one cannot be, they're saying that there's no capacity increase in that. Obviously, First Phosphate and others are coming online. And then what you see is the dark blue is the industrial uses for phosphate, okay, in dark blue. So there's a little bit of a misnomer in there, which is the white space right now between the light blue line and the dark blue line, which says till about, what is that, 2026, right?
Yeah.
There's a little bit of excess in the market, right? So there's more purified phosphoric acid being produced than there is supply of it. But boom, look at what they're predicting the LFP battery is going to do. And I can tell you they're being conservative when they come into that. It's going to mean that, this is very conservative projections. By 2045, the amount of purified phosphoric acid has got to double, but you can't make any more of it because you can't make any more of it off of sedimentary rock. You need a new source of phosphate. But if you bring in a new source of phosphate that's sedimentary rock, 80% of what you make has to go into fertilizer. Where are you going to find a market for that? So you need a rock that can produce a lot of purified phosphoric acid with no fertilizer. And that's effectively what First Phosphate does with its igneous deposits in Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, Quebec, which are amongst the purest of the world. We're able to get to a 41% pure P2O5 content, almost 100% pure phosphate. And, there's a study that just came out from the University of Queens and the University of Chicoutimi in Quebec. You could go to our website and you could find that. And it just shows that of all the producers in the world, we've been able to get to the cleanest form of apatite that's ever been produced out of igneous rock. Now, that's important because over 90% of that goes directly into making purified phosphoric acid. You only have a very small waste stream of about 5-10%, which will go into fertilizer to get rid of it. So we're producing the holy grail. We're producing the purified phosphoric acid directly for the technology industry, directly for PPA, directly for making LFP cathode active material. And so you can see that's where the price spikes are going to be. That's where the shortage is going to be. So we're filling that shortage. We'll be filling that gap. We might be able to fill 5 to 10% of that gap. Who's going to fill the rest of it? I don't know. Price increase, right? Who's going to have it? Hopefully we'll have it, and we'll partake in that price increase. So you don't got. It's like what Wayne Gretzky used to say: do not look at where the puck is right now, because if you look at that puck right now, what does it say? There's already too much phosphoric acid in the world. Look at where that puck's going to be in 2030. Look at that puck in 2035. Look at it in 2040. And LFP is going to be here with us until at least 2035, 2040, until who knows what the next revolution is. But it's here to stay because, like I said, you can't really make it any cheaper. These are the cheapest types of inputs that you can make. And people start saying, well, what about the sodium battery? You know that like a ton of street salt, the stuff that they throw just on the streets, not even purified, now is going at about $100 to $200 per ton US. Think about purifying that. You're easily going to be, much higher. And phosphate rock right now is trading at about, 300, our pure phosphate rock's about 300, 350 US per ton. So how are you going to make this stuff any cheaper? No matter how are you going to substitute the phosphate for anything any cheaper? So we're in the right market. We're in the right time. We're in with a technology that's proven, and we have a plan, and we've got the partners to get there.
It's interesting too with adoption of even new tech. If someone says, "Oh, there's a brand new battery," okay, great. Or graphene is going to change the world. Okay, great. I think it was MIT. It said it usually takes about 10 years between a discovery of something interesting or novel or new to even have a chance of becoming commercial. Doesn't mean it's going to. Like there's that long stretch. That happens. So even if there was a brand new battery tomorrow that someone says, "Oh, this is the way we're going," and even if it was cheaper, there's already been so much money put into the lithium iron phosphate and to build out that supply chain for the next however long. Someone has to fill that. I mean, this is what is so wonderful about the situation, even just in Quebec with the amount of gigafactories, wind farms, leaving the cars just alone. There's a desperate need to have supply of product. Because people are becoming more and more aware of this need for critical metals and sourcing at the right place on both sides of the aisle. There's no discussion of difference or change. It leaves, I think people get scared of it because there's not as many people talking about the solutions as to this problem, and it seems overwhelming. But this one area we have, like literally from deposit to solution end use user, which also is very different. You're seeing a bit more of it in the mining world today, but you're more of a unique situation, I would say, than many out there.
Yeah, look, I mean, Andrew, thank you for noting that this phosphate that we have is amongst the 1% of the purest phosphate found on the planet. It's sitting at 50 kilometers from the deep sea port of Saguenay, 50 kilometers from the closest intermodal station, 50 kilometers from our downstream processing plant. We can get to Europe. We can get to North America. I mean, it's all there. We got the natural gas, the water, the electricity. It's all sitting, within in a very short span. It's a very good carbon waste footprint. We are. I believe that this phosphate is rarer than gold and it's rarer than lithium. And what's even more rare is the fact that you find it near such infrastructure. It's like a perfect storm. Now we have a lot to execute. We have a lot to do as a management team to get there. But in terms of the setup, you always have to look at the setup. You have to look at the management team, and you also have to look at the industry. I don't think the industry is going away. I think the management team and our team is great, and I think the setup is perfect here. So I think we're going to be able to really take advantage of this. What is to come here in electrification around LFP battery in North America.
I think it's important to, whether anyone's opinions and views on the climate and the environment, all that, remove that from anyone's bias and say, if you could do mining a little bit cleaner, hey, that's just a win-win. So, that's kind of how I diffuse anyone saying, well, I don't believe in this. Listen, just mining, if you could do it a heck of a lot cleaner, is that a good thing? Yeah, of course it is. And I kind of say that under the larger headline of today. Bloomberg came out, Bloomberg NEF. Mining industry needs $2.1 trillion in new investment by 2050 to meet net zero demand for raw materials. So that's, I mean, that's a staggering number. And any of the naysayers will say, well, we can't do mining because it's not clean and it's this and it's that. And you go, it's a hurdle. It's a challenge. The mining industry has a chance right now getting some eyes. People are starting to come to terms with how critical mining is. If you want to do any transition of any kind, it means mining. $2.1 trillion is such a huge number, even if you stretch it to 2050. I mean, can you imagine, John, trying to fit in, what is that, like $100 billion a year into the mining sector? I mean, what would that look like? I'm asking a bunch of different questions here, but give me your take on that 2.1 trillion. I know when I did the quick math, whenever I looked at Elon Musk making the claim that, hey, we could just go entirely solar. I think just without batteries, that would have been 1.7 trillion alone. And it would take like 140,000 ounces, I think, or 140,000 tons of silver. And we only produce about 25,000 tons of silver a year. So you go, it can't happen. So there's the scale of acknowledgement of where are you getting this stuff, who's supplying it, and this is where especially companies like you have a chance to really shine.
Right. Yeah. No. Anybody who's able to get into production is going to have a mass market ahead of them, where they'll be able to be a price maker. However, on your other point there of hey, net zero, are we going to get there? Look, I think we have to try our best in anything we do in life, but we also have to not be fanatical. What do I mean by that? You're not. We know we're not going to get there. But let's just try our best, and let's be open to other possibilities. There's still room out there for gas. There's still room out there for oil. There's still room out there for coal. There's still room out there for NMC battery, LFP battery, hydrogen, sodium battery, like whatever anybody wants to come up with. There's room for everything. So let's all try to work together, and move towards, obviously, yes, cleaner energy, but we're not going to get there all in one shot, right? And then you got uranium, but okay, then it's nuclear. So everything's got a trade-off. Like, we think we're in a very good space in this LFP battery. It's safe, it's cheaper, it's fairly easy to make. It lasts. It's got a long life, and it's probably one of the best batteries of mass adoption. So I'm very happy at the space that we're in, but I'm by no means saying, hey, it's all about us and everybody else is not going to make it. We need everything. We need everybody who could contribute to the society, to this energy paradigm, and yeah, hopefully making it cleaner and cleaner. But it's going to take time, and it's not going to happen until by 2050, 2040, whatever they want to do. It's not going to happen.
Also, this is a question where people start getting a bit interested in mining. They start thinking, okay, I'm accepting this premise that you've made, that if we do this transition, it's all of these metals. I get it. You go, we won't go to a big discussion about permitting, but then they kind of roll up against the, oh my goodness, you have to have agreements with different partners and Aboriginal groups and native rights, as well as permitting from the province you're in. Oh, what does all that look like? Are they actual partners? Let me know, just from your perspective, what you've seen in your career and with First Phosphate.
Well, they're right. If you go back to our presentation deck, I'd like you to just scroll up a little bit to where are we here? Just above the management page, 3 pages up. There's project de-risking and key relationships. There you go. So you're right. It is tough to do, but we did that. So we realized that we had the right asset in the right spot, the right rock, the right everything. But then we realized that without community, you're going nowhere. So we made it our mantra to be very, very deeply involved in the community of Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean. If you look here, you see the flag of Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean on this side. Below it, you see the flag of the Indigenous group. And the reason for that is, we've have agreements with both. We have agreements with the Indigenous group, the Mastoyash Indigenous group. They've given us consent. They're part of our share structure. They will be having the opportunity to invest and looking very hard at investing in some of our downstream projects and in our mine. We've got local committee for maximization of economic benefits has endorsed us, has given us major project status. We also have a small subsidy that's come in from the government of Quebec, the Ministry of Natural Resources. We work with a lot of local community business in there. A lot of those locals you'll see there are local from the Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean. We wanted to be all about local. We wanted to be all about community, and that has been a winner. And then we also work with large international outfits as well. There's a Glencore subsidiary. There's Prayon, which is purified phosphoric acid producer out of Belgium. American Battery Factory making batteries in the U.S. needing 40,000 tons of LFP CAM from us by 2028. That's like a $500 million contract. Eventually, when we get that into a definitive state, we've got the Export-Import Bank of the United States willing to come in and finance a large part of our facilities. So we noticed since the very beginning that it's not about a mine, but it's about the way you communicate. Your communications are very important. Your politics are very important. Your ability to motivate the local community. And so we're quite happy, and I knock on wood when I say that, but we're doing quite well locally. And I do think that, there is a point in what you said. Yes, it's a lot of work, but there's a huge prize at the end of the day, and the huge prize is a community that's behind you, and a project that just goes easy, and people actually help it along instead of trying to block it. The reason a lot of these projects are blocked is because they're not realistic. They don't take into consideration what's going on locally in the community, and they're seen as a net negative to the community. We're trying to be seen as a net positive to the community. We're doing everything to leave work in the community, bring more work to the community, leave the jobs, leave the bring the economic returns to the community. Do a net positive for the community. See the way that the community wants to advance, working on their timeline, working together with local leaders. So that's been hugely successful for us, and I would suggest that any mining company do that as well, because what it is you see the word we've used up there, project de-risking, right, through key
Yeah.
relationships. It's those relationships that de-risk your project, and they build upon other relationships.
Now, this is a pie in the sky kind of question. It relates to that. Is even to attempt to do $2.1 trillion placement into mining, I would assume there would have to be a lot of changes to the speed of permitting, the willingness within governments, especially in the West, to be open to like how serious are we about this? Like, do you really want this metal? Do you want it in the ground, or like do you think there's an open conversation? This is a very tough one because I mean it's politicians, it's public perception, but do you think there's a bit of give and take to say the average mine is what 17 or 18 years between discovery and being created?
Yeah, look, I mean, if you go back to that slide that you were on and just go 2 slides up, and we got the map of the Saguenay-Lac Saint-Jean area in Quebec there. I'll show you some really interesting facts. So yeah, see that map there? If you look, you can see the
Yeah.
big lake, that's Lac Saint-Jean. So in that area there, Rio Tinto has been there operating for 100 years. Just so you know, like most of the power facilities and aluminum smelters were built during the Second World War there, and they were built darn quick. So, if it comes down to that, a society can get things done. Mind you, it was a long time ago. There were some issues. They flooded some lands that they shouldn't have. I get it. But if a society needs to move, it can move quick. Now, we're moving our project as fast as we can along within the framework of, the proper everything following all the rules. You have no choice. But we know that at some point it's going to become so critical for these minerals that anybody who's kind of halfway through the process is going to get a massive speed up, because we're going to need it. Now, if we move to more peaceful times in the world, okay, we're still going to need it. But if we move to less peaceful times, they're going to need it even quicker.
Yeah.
So, we're doing what we can. We know that all the governments are trying to speed this up, and it's just about, it doesn't take much. It's a few pieces of legislation that we need to change. There's consultation around that. Different political parties see it in different ways. But I mean, we're personally trying to get our mine up here by 2028, 2029. It's an extremely aggressive time frame. We've been at it for 2 years. There's another 5 years, 6 years to go.
Yep.
But we believe we can make it in that time frame. So I don't know. I don't necessarily buy in on the 16 years. I think the reason that the 16 years and all that is there is because, quite frankly, they haven't done a lot of the back end work that we did to get the community on board. Like
Yeah.
we needed to get megawatts. Boom. Our indigenous community, our local politicians, they wrote in our favor. We needed to get phosphate on the critical minerals list. Same thing. Everybody wrote in our favor to get it on there. Local. Then Quebec. Then we need to get it onto the Canadian critical minerals list. Everybody locally, everybody in Quebec, the Quebec government actually favored our application. So it's all about, community working together, getting people to understand what's going on. And a lot of that then just cuts down a lot of the time afterwards. So yes,
Yeah.
it is frustrating for a lot of mining companies. Don't get me wrong. The red tape is massive. It's brutal. And, the problem is one area of government is saying one thing, but the other area of government is doing the different thing. We've been called out to a lot of these meetings, U.S. wide, Canada wide, to suggest improvements to the Mining Act, et cetera, et cetera. And it just comes out over and over again. Left side of the mouth is not saying what the right side is. It's very frustrating. Lots of red tape for companies. The permitting's got to go down. I think that has all been heard. So now it's a matter of getting through these elections, and hopefully, both sides of government will realize that there is something to be done here. I'm really, really, happy about some of the bipartisan measures that I see in the United States. Like XM Bank came out the other day, and thanks to a bipartisan measure, Democrat and a Republican standing up together, they said that a lot of the investment from XM Bank, the Export Import Bank of the United States, this came out 2 days ago, will now be made into critical minerals. In terms of getting phosphate onto the critical minerals list of the U.S., guess what? There's a Democrat and a Republican both vying for that, and that's what we need. We got to bring both sides of the aisle here in Canada, the U.S., all over the world, closer together into things that really matter, and getting those things forward. So I think it's coming together. I see a lot of positive signs. Hey, there is a lot of reasons to be cynical and negative. I think the markets are clearly there, but there's, I think people should start to see the vision of being positive, because as we know, when a market's overly 100% positive, it can only get negative. And when
Yes.
it's 100% negative, it can only get positive. So I'm extremely positive. I'm extremely bullish. I think it's going to be a market of stocks, not a stock market. I think a lot of these juniors that don't have a base case are not coming back. But I think the ones with a strong base case, I think you're going to see a real, massive, a massive flux to them. I hope we'll be like that. I hope we've been able to garner the attention and the trust of the markets, that First Phosphate will be able to, be a name that you can hold, you can trust, and you can know that the company's advancing. And that's what we want to do as management. We've been meeting and beating all of our milestones and all of our goals. We want to keep doing that. We want to keep doing good by our shareholders. And eventually, sentiment has to change. Sentiment is, is just as good as our moods as human beings, right?
Yeah.
Happy, sad, back to happy.
Well, it's interesting because Larry Fink was just on, I think, Bloomberg a couple of days ago, and he said, listen, as far as BlackRock's concerned, their macro moving forward remains unchanged. They're very hopeful. They're very optimistic. They see the writing on the wall. They see the direction things are going. Like you said, does it mean that you have to fund some oil and gas? Of course we do. It's going to be around for a while. But are we also doing this major transition? Yes. And it's not easy. And it's not easy when you say we're kind of decoupling a bit from China. We see, in order to meet just the vehicle demand in say just Canada, I mean, we've got Volkswagen coming in, but they're not in today with a plant ready to sell cars. Like there's a period of time it takes to get things going. And I think that's being reflected also in this market, removing the politics of the slowdown in sales.
Let me, and I don't mean to interrupt, but see something like that. Volkswagen coming to Canada. Coming to Canada, they're going to build batteries and cars. No doubt in anybody's mind they're going to do that. But guess what? Where's the plan to source the raw materials for that? So companies like ours, we have to continue. We have to go fast, because when those guys come and say, we need it now, what do you say? Well, I don't know. Like the people say, hey, when was the best time to plant the tree? 20 years ago. When's the next best time to plant the tree? Today, right? So, well, you should have told us 20 years ago that you needed, the phosphate and all this for the batteries. But we know that's not going to happen. They're going to say, okay, I need it now. So we got to keep going, and we got to be ready for that. And the market's got to see that. What are the companies that are going to benefit from this? Which, it's only 3, 6, 12, 18, 24 months away. I mean, it's coming. So you have to be ready. You have to continue. We have to fund these companies, and we have to move forward, and we have to have these projects ready for when they want the tree they want to harvest the tree, right?
That's a follow-up question. We've seen it a bit with the lithium sector. I mean, there's probably a knowledge base for like the Volvo or Ford or someone else. Do you see that being a possibility of them kind of coming to terms with going, okay, wait a second. Yeah. The closer you guys get to the culmination of, yes, we're going to be mining, this is the time frame. Do you see them coming in and saying, listen, we'll help fund this for X amount of production direct out of the company? Like, do you see that being a relationship with car companies moving forward? Not just car companies, but anyone who's got batteries.
Look, we've seen some of that, and it necessarily hasn't been that successful, because if you're making a car, okay, you need to have the offtake on the mine, but being invested in a mine is a whole different skill set. I think what needs to happen is, I think these companies need to step up, and they got to pick their offtakes. Now they want to offtake on, everybody wants to offtake on something that's already built, right?
Yeah.
But I tell everybody, by the time the mine is built, our mine is built, there's not going to be any offtake left for you.
Yeah.
So if you want the offtake, then you got to get involved now. And it's not necessarily that they should put up the money, but if they want offtake, yes, they should put up some type of a bond, loan the company some money, whatever it is, without trying to get involved too much in the politics of that company and steering it in the wrong direction or towards their own self-interest, but just funding the company. Hey, I want your offtake. Here's $10-20 million to get developed. But I'll have X amount of your offtake once you're done. I think more of that needs to happen. And I think it's got to be done very loosely, without strings, and very smart. I think not enough of that is being done, because I think what's going to happen, everyone's going to turn around from these larger companies and want the product, but the product's not going to be there, and then they're going to scramble. Price is going to go through the roof.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be good. So I think a lot more of this needs to happen now. One of my big things was even to the U.S. government, create stockpiles of this stuff already and give offtakes to companies so that they can go and bank those offtakes and get money to get into production. So that's something the governments could do, or even military contracts from the government should be given out to these mining companies, those that show obviously that they have the ability to do it, rather than the big subsidies. I'm not, the subsidies are fine, but I'm not going to complain about them. I do as a taxpayer, but as a business owner, I would, we would really like to see, some solid agreements, some solid downstream uh, processes that we could develop into, that we could already have off taken. For instance, there's a 3,000 megawatt wind project 100 kilometers from where our mine is going to be, and about 60 kilometers from our processing facilities, and that'll be the second largest wind project in the world outside of China. So I would
Oh,
like,
wow.
those who are involved in that start saying, hey, okay, well, we're building this. We're going to need LFP batteries to store the energy coming off of there. Boom, First Phosphate, here's a contract for, uh, another ABF. Here's 40, we need 40,000 tons of this stuff, another
Yep.
$500 million. We'll sign that because we know we're going to need that. That helps you, it helps us. So that's what these companies need to be doing. That's what Volkswagen needs to be doing. That's what all these gigafactory concepts need to be doing. They need to be securing their offtakes now, and giving the ability to these companies to be able to go back and bank them so that the critical minerals will be there. And I think that makes a lot of sense because it's demand driven. It's not too involved in it
Yeah.
politically, and it doesn't steer the companies in the wrong direction. So I think that's the way I see it going. I think that's the way it is going to go, because there's no way the governments can fund all of this, and they don't know who to fund, what to fund, and
No.
quite frankly, when you're funded like this, the money's just not used in the right ways at times. I've seen, that's one of the reasons we're surviving here is we never had a big burn, we never had a big budget, we never had free money, and so we're frugal with it. We get a lot done for our dollar. Whereas, sometimes when you have helicopter money coming down, it's helicopters in and helicopters out,
Yeah.
right? It brings about bad behavior. Now, I'm not commenting on anyone in particular. I mean, some people probably make very good use of that, but we like to really make use of, we like investor dollars. We like to be held accountable by our investors, and we like to be able to perform. We like to be able to execute.
Well, I'm glad to have you on, because we wanted to have the conversation just because, unfortunately, EVs have become a political discussion, but over the kind of that being the impetus to talk about the critical need for mining and to get in that admission by Bloomberg, that acknowledgement, 2.1 trillion is a massive number. Now, that's not all towards just mining, but that, takes into account we're going to be mining quite a bit. And the opportunity for someone who has interest in any aspect of this, whether it's batteries, AI, energy, that's going to come from mining. And I want to facilitate that conversation to people, that it's not only does it become aligned with one's own values as to where they're putting their dollars, but that there's an asymmetric gain, that the mining sector is tiny, it's infinitesimal compared to just NVIDIA, just one company. That the attempting to put the level of money and resources needed to do half of a transition is enormous. And that's also, out of one's own self-interest, the opportunity for someone to be looking and to be getting educated about it.
Absolutely, Andrew. Absolutely.
And thanks so much for joining with us. And I'll leave it with just a thought too, that when we've had some of those cycles, we were talking about the length of time to get a mine on, we didn't face all of the major issues we have today. We don't have war, a lot of uncertainty, but we also don't have that full acknowledgement of this energy transition and that knowing that it's critical metals. It seems like so many factors are converging. People are slowly understanding that, but that's whenever things have the opportunity to blow up in a positive way and really ignite and start. And perhaps maybe with some of the money looking for safer places, going into gold, going into silver, going into copper, they're going to start to acknowledge and realize, what, there's a lot of value that can be had here if we're willing to be a little bit patient and work towards all of these key stakeholders around the world that are pushing towards a greater vision.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thanks, John. Really appreciate the conversation, and we're going to keep an eye on you as well. And just also to people know, we don't work with John right now. This wasn't a paid conversation or anything like that of that nature. Although we do own a ton of the stock, we love the company. We are happy to sit in this for years to come, because once again, we look for companies that have vertical integration, that have long-term vision, and that regardless of stock price where they're at, they've hit milestones. And you guys, I have to say, I mean, you're one of very few companies that can say the amount of work done and the milestones hit, and not getting recognition from it because of an ugly market or for whatever reason. We're happy. That we love to see that, because we look at it as being stored up value, and we're happy to sit and watch you hit the more milestones out the park. And we want to spread the word about this company and about this whole shift and what it means for people and their own portfolios. So thanks again, John. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Thank you for your trust in First Phosphate and trust in myself and our management team. And hey, we inch forward every day.
Excellent. Well, thanks again. Take care, everyone. We'll talk to you after the weekend.